I can define success for anyone out there that's having trouble with this when it comes to advising your clients. It's getting them the house or getting the home sold. We're in a black and white business, Lisa, and it's either you get the job done or you don't. There's no almost, there's no gray area. If you are not getting educated about current real estate market conditions, whether you're a team leader like Lisa Chinatti, whether you're in sales, you're in mortgages, finance, accounting, or you're someone's trusted advisor, you're doing yourself and your client base a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I'm Tom Toole. I'm here with what I called the fiercest operator in real estate on the BAM announcement. Look, you liked it and you texted me, you lying.
It was very kind.
It was, in all seriousness. So we're here with Lisa Chinatti. We got a lot to talk about this week. There's things happening in the geopolitical environment. We got some CPI data that came in. There's questions about what if 100,000 agents leave the real estate industry? What if 1 million real estate agents leave the industry in light of these buyer brokerage lawsuits that are still set to go to trial in 4 days, Lisa? 4 days. There's no settlement yet. We'll wonder what happens there. Where I want to start with, and you had kind of brought this up, is the CPI data that's come in. So this just dropped today that the U.S. stocks and the Dow Jones, they posted their first drop in 5 sessions, and there was a bond sell-off in light of the CPI data, the Consumer Price Index, coming in stronger than expected. And we've seen rent climb again. Lawrence Yun had another comment here. I'm going to read the comment, and then I want to get your take on this. This is his instant reaction from Lawrence Yun. I mean, this guy just comes out when there's bad news. It seems like that's all he does. He has one of those Cush Realtor, National Association of Realtor salaries. So consumer prices are not fully compliant, though they have decelerated from last year. In September, inflation rose 3.7%, the same as in the prior month, but slower than 8.2% a year ago. The Federal Reserve's goal of raising the interest rates has been to bring inflation near 2%. We're not quite there yet, partly because gasoline prices have been moving up for 4 straight months, now up 3% from a year ago and up 68% from pre-COVID days. Bananas number there. Despite many private sector data pointing towards softer rent growth, the official government measurement is still showing a fast increase. Rents rose 7.4% from a year ago. This is the main reason why consumer prices are not fully under control and why the Fed refuses to consider cutting interest rates. It is nonetheless inevitable for rent growth to slow because of the construction of multiple new apartments. Inflation and interest rates will be lower next year. What do you think about these comments? What do you think about the CPI data, Lisa?
Is all I can say about that.
Great analysis. That's what people come to Knowledge Brokers for.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I think just like everything else, I think when you start slicing into it and really kind of taking the layers of what's going on, that there's more to understand than what just meets on the surface, right? And I know we've dug into this, multiple times in the past. It's understanding the difference between those things that are actually increasing, those things that are actually holding steady, and how it all plays together. I think the other component to it is, you and I were texting about articles this morning, and even the jobs report, looking deep into I can't say that word. So looking, just forget it. As you look further into the information on the jobs report, right? Like understanding what's actually going on there with where there's sectors that are having increased job growth and the sectors where it's actually starting to pull back, and we're finding that jobs are harder to come by. And I think the same is true with the CPI data. I think that there's some areas that are certainly still accelerating, still growing faster than they should be or could be. But there's other areas that are telling a slightly different story. And I think it's important to be able to put it all into perspective.
So I agree with you. This is not just a one-size-fits-all data point that we can just look at and make decisions. And unfortunately, what it seems like is happening at the Federal Reserve is that's exactly what they're doing. They're making these decisions based on a couple key data points. Logan Mohtashami came out with an article right after the CPI report was released, And he said, hey, this was good because it shows core inflation, which is what the Fed cares about, is trending in the right direction.
Correct.
And that it really makes the case for a Fed rate pause. Now, a lot of members of the Fed, they came out and said, and they were talking about this earlier in the week before this data came out. So this was before the CPI data got released. A lot of policymakers at the Federal Reserve saw that the policy should remain restrictive for some time, and a majority of those people believe it was warranted to have another rate hike before the end of the year. This data probably tells us a little otherwise, and I know a lot of people are calling for this now. I mean, there's been all sorts of organizations, the Mortgage Bankers Association, Lawrence Unit, NAR. I mean, the list goes on, that are saying stop the rate hikes. So, are we going to get a pause in rate hikes? And what does the CPI data affect that at all? Or what do you think happens here, Lisa? I mean, that's what I'm curious about.
I actually do think that there was another report. I was just trying to find it. I don't remember which one it was, and I'll try to pull it up in a moment. But where the percentage of folks that thought we were going to hit a hold on rates, I think it increased from in the mid 70s to in the low 80s, expecting that there won't be an increase coming in this next round, which I think is a positive. I think, kind of like we alluded to, there's a lot going on kind of across the economy, across the world, that is definitely going to have impact. And I think it's going to require a little bit more certainty and the creation of stability to ensure that everything kind of continues along the way that it should be.
Yeah, so the CME Group, you can go to cmegroup.com. They chart the likelihood of a Fed rate increase and the probability of that happening. And as of today, they're at 88.2%. That right now that they do not see a rate hike increase.
Yes,
which is
it.
Where they trended prior to the previous meeting where they didn't hike rates. So I'd like to see it. I think it's the right move given where data's coming in, and especially this lagged rental data, which I know Byron is always talking about this on the show. And it's just something that needs to be examined a little further. So the CPI data, I think it's good news overall. We'll see how you got to see how this stuff plays out. Like, I mean, you get the news, you see the market react, but there's some other things happening right now. So we've got a major geopolitical issue happening over in Israel, right? So we've seen this in the past when other things like this have happened. And obviously, there's a lot to unpack there, and our hearts go out to the people that are affected by this. These
Without
sort
a
of
doubt.
events, they have an impact on the economy. And that's what the intent of this show is. So we're not making light of what's going on. It's just that this is going to have an impact, whether we like it or not. And we saw the same thing earlier in the year with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. So how do you see this impacting the economy, Lisa?
I think, honestly, it's maybe a little bit too early to tell. I think what we did see is that there was a decent fall in rates earlier in the week when it was all kind of shaking out in the earliest days. I think what's become clear is that it's not going to be a short-term issue. And I don't know what the most sensitive word to use for this is. And that's where I'm going with, I think, understanding all of the different factors that are at play and the uncertainty that exists with exactly how this is going to shake out. I think it's going to be required that our government provide some sense of stability and give everyone a sense of certainty about where the economy is going to go, and that it is going to not get out of control one way or the other. So, like I said, my gut says that the government needs to come out and provide some level of certainty around the rates sooner rather than later, so that the uncertainty happening across the world doesn't trickle into the economy at a deep level.
Well, I mean, we saw something similar with the COVID-19 pandemic, right? I mean, I'm not
Correct.
comparing the situations at all, but it was a global issue, and
Correct.
it affected the economy. So I'd love the government to come out and say that. Do you think they're going to? I mean, it just seems like that when these things happen, Jerome Powell makes his comments after the meetings, and it's always like a bunch of backpedaling and talking out of both sides of his mouth because he's a politician. I'd love to see some leadership here from the U.S. where that happens. I don't know that it's going to happen. I mean, I think that's the reality. And if we got certainty of, hey, this is our plan for now, we need to monitor geopolitical issues as they come up. I think that would calm the markets down, which would also calm calm down a lot of the concern and the uncertainty in the market right now, because there is so much confusion in the marketplace. And adding something like this on top of it, where it's, forget about the economy, there's very bad things happening to people for no reason, or there are reasons. I'm not going to get into all that, but there's this is a dangerous road to go down for this podcast, so we're going to stop there. And when that stuff's happening, it causes people to hesitate on many levels, and it creates confusion. And I feel like we're going to see a lot of confusion throughout the rest of the fourth quarter here if this continues.
Agreed.
All right. So
switching gears slightly, yes. I think what I wanted to kind of bring up was some data about incomes. I think I shared an article with you earlier today showing that, where is it? That the average income, here it is, that the incomes are falling in 17 states. And I know your state was one of those that was impacted, as was Massachusetts. And so super interesting to see that despite inflation, despite strong job reports, that we were looking at a median household income across the U.S. that slipped 2.3%. So an interesting stat. The other one that came out today is that they announced that Social Security payments will be going up next year by about 3% to account for inflation.
I'm surprised Social Security is still around right now, but that's a whole nother discussion.
That's a different topic.
Yes. But so I saw this data, Lisa, and I found this fascinating because, I mean, we're in, our states are actually, I think, very similar in terms of demographics and how they're set up. I mean, Pennsylvania's larger geographically, has got really two major cities versus one major city like Massachusetts, but very similar in terms of, what people do, the housing markets. The price points are different, but I do see a lot of similarities there. Pennsylvania was down 3.7%. Massachusetts down 2.5%. Now, it's also the median. And Steve Harney from Keeping Current Matters, he hates median data, because it's just the arbitrary middle number. I don't think you can ignore it when you're seeing it happen. And then there's places like Alaska, Alabama, and Florida where the numbers are up. Alaska saw the highest gain in the entire country in median income.
That was crazy,
how about
wasn't
that? It? And Utah as well. So it brings us back to the affordability question, is that how, and what the survey that we're seeing and the data that I've seen, I've been charting this pretty closely, is that it comes back to rates. That when you see incomes drop and you see rates double basically in 3 years, affordability is still a major challenge for the people that want to go buy properties. And this is not going away. And if the Fed keeps doing what they're doing, it's going to be a long-term issue. And it worries me that we might see like a hard landing instead of a soft landing with the economy if they don't let things kind of calm down a little bit. What have you seen on the ground? What are your agents telling you about affordability right now, especially as we head into this fourth quarter market here, where we know it's a dogfight getting anything under contract?
So if you're looking to level up your business, scale it out, be able to manage more clients, have a bigger pipeline, you're going to need a reliable CRM. And as a Boomtown user since 2016, we've got some exciting news that KV Core and Boomtown are now part of the same family. And that means they've come together, they're using all their knowledge, all their tech, and they're making an even better CRM that's going to help you scale your business, sell more houses, talk to more people, and manage your leads more efficiently. And if you're like Lisa, she's in her CRM every week. She's in her CRM every day. I think that's what she does in her free time. And she's constantly looking at it to make sure that the opportunities aren't slipping through the cracks. That's what a great knowledge broker does. So if you want to get your business to another level, lean into Boomtown. Visit boomtownroi.com/knowledge brokers for more information. Again, it's boomtownroi.com/knowledge brokers. I'm a boomer since 2016. It's leveled my business up tremendously. Lisa loves her CRM. Byron does too. You should do the same. Get with Boomtown.
Actually, that's interesting. We might be hard to get stuff under contract, no doubt. But what we are seeing, it was an interesting conversation. I was out on the sales floor earlier today, sitting with some of my more senior agents, and we were chatting about what's going on, strategizing through the last quarter. And I shared that I was working with one of our newer agents who got an accepted offer yesterday. And the property was listed at 760, 765, one of those two. She got the property under contract for $15,000 less than asking price, but she was also able to negotiate $38,000 in seller concessions to pay for massive rate buy down and all closing costs. And as I was telling the story, one of the other agents, Matt, who was sitting next to me, said that he just put a deal under contract for $65,000 under asking as well. And so I think it's always interesting. And you and I know that this is 100% true. There's going to be some listings that expire at the end of this year. They're going to sit on the market. They're not going to sell. They're going to be withdrawn or whatever. Those same properties are going to come back on market in the spring, and they're likely going to sell for higher than what they were listed for today. I still think that that's going to happen next year. I think that inventory is still low. I think affordability is without a doubt an issue, but I think there's some motivation from sellers who want to get their home sold by the end of the year. It's going to require coaching both buyers and sellers to understand how to make those things happen, and also being able to understand that what we know is rates are high. They're not probably at their all-time highest yet, but I don't think we're going to see double-digit rates. Could be wrong. Hope I'm not wrong. But
you better be wrong.
I do, right? I do think that there's opportunity for buyers who can be coached into making a lesser purchase right now to get into a home that they stay in for 2 to 3 years, to start building their equity and put themselves into a position where they have been able to build some of that equity, gain additional cash for when they want to go buy their next property. Because I don't think that anything is really going to change. I don't think we're going to see prices plummet. I don't think that we're going to see anything dramatic change within the market in the near future. And so I think it's really up to agents to be fiercely coaching their clients for how to find success and redefining what success looks like in this market.
I can define success for anyone out there that's having trouble with this when it comes to advising your clients. It's getting them the house or getting the home sold. We're in a black and white business, Lisa, and it's either you get the job done or you don't. There's no almost, there's no gray area. It's either you get the settlement and you get your proceeds check as a seller, or you get the house and move in or rent it out if you're a buyer, whatever you're going to do there. And some people, I don't, there's this, I was just talking about this earlier today with some folks on our team that you mentioned coaching, right? I look at that as like a guide, right? So, I mean, you look at like the classic Disney movie where there's the damsel in distress. It's never someone like Lisa, but the damsel in distress, right? The princess that needs help. And there's some, dashing, a hero that comes in and they save the day, right? That is not the job of a great real estate agent. You're not there to save the day. It's not about you. Then there's movies like Star Wars or Harry Potter where you have the guide, right? Luke Skywalker's the hero. That's kind of that's who the client is. And we actually saw someone give this speech at I think a Tom Ferry event in New York. So you have people like Obi-Wan Kenobi that are guiding Luke Skywalker through the process, or Dumbledore, who guides a young Harry Potter on how to win the war, right? That's what agents should be doing. You give advice, you guide them down the right path. They don't always follow the path. That's what happens, but you've got to say, hey, here's what you need to do to be successful. And that's a skill that I am clear has been lost with a lot of the agents that have gotten into the business over the past 5 years. They're not familiar with these tough conversations of, hey, we've got to adjust our price here. We've got to take a lower number. You've had 75 other people pass on the property. This is the first offer we've gotten. And, it actually ties in with this data digest from Housing Wire that asks about, like, what happens if 1 million real estate agents disappear? And with all this buyer brokerage nonsense going on, it's not nonsense, these class action lawsuits that are going to trial, if you don't know how to do that, you're in a lot of trouble as a real estate agent, because this is what it required of the job prior to 2020. You know that, Lisa. I know that. And knowledge brokers know that. But if you're not working on those skills on a regular basis and having, even like role playing these conversations, because it's not easy it's not easy telling someone what they don't want to hear, but it's what they need to hear to get the job done, which is why they hired you in the first place, to either sell the home or get them into a property.
Correct.
So what do you recommend for those people? Like, so if you're having trouble with these tough conversations, what do you recommend to those agents? I mean, we say role play, like it's just this easy thing. What does that really look like for someone that's maybe having trouble having tough conversations? They can't get that breakthrough with their client. What are you saying to those folks to help coach them? 'Cause you're coaching hundreds of people right now at your organization.
Just had this conversation about 2 or 3 hours ago. And I think I'm going to go back to exactly what I said to this agent. You are the average of the 5 people that you choose to spend the most amount of time with. And that means role playing as well. And your skills are going to be the average of those that you role play with. And so I think it's super important to find people who've got some experience navigating these situations and who can have those conversations and teach you some skills that we've used back in the day. I think it's super important to be doing it daily, 5, 10, 15 minutes, breaking it down into chunks and focusing on it, because it's better to be practicing with each other than to be practicing on our clients. But I think the biggest thing is just to understand that you have to do it and you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, whether it's the role playing and having the conversations, asking for help from those who are a little bit more senior, who've been there, done that, or finding resources, whether it's through communities like BAM or your local market.
Yeah, and you mentioned something there. I mean, you don't want to practice on clients. I'd say you don't want to practice on paychecks, and it's the same idea,
Same
right?
thing.
And same thing. And the role play format, you mentioned the timing of it here. Here's what role play isn't. It's not a bitch session. It's not complaining about your clients and getting on the phone. Literally, the role play call should be you get on the phone. I would jump right into the role play. So I would jump into the call. Lisa picks up. I would start out with my OFQ, my opening fact question. Hey, it's Tom here with Remax. I'm following up with you as promised. I don't know if you've seen that inventory's grown 9% year over year in our marketplace. Would that change your thoughts on whether you want to make a real estate decision or not in the next 6 to 12 months? Ask a question, then let them talk, right? And you're going to get the objections like, well, rates are too high. I don't know if I want to transact, or, I'm still not seeing any inventory. That number's great. It's not working for me. Or maybe there's something else that comes up. Role play, people think it's stupid. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I just get this. I don't need to role play. This is silly. But when you get those objections and it's like muscle memory, right? Like you hear it and you know exactly what to say, Lisa. There is no better feeling as a sales professional because people say things that don't make sense all the time. And it's our job to guide them back to the path to get them where they wanted to in the first place.
Unconscious competence. You've got to get to the point where you just know it without even having to think about it, where you can do it in your sleep with your eyes closed, forwards, backwards, pick up at any point in the conversation without having to have had the whole lead up or the whole closing. So important.
So, yeah, and I could not agree more. And this is, I hear this, a lot of people say like we're going into a skill-based market. This is a market for people that actually like treat this like a business. I don't think it's that it's easy. I can just do whatever I want to do. I'm going to work part-time. So let's talk about this data dump here from Housing Wire, the data digest. So I want to ask you this question and just I want to get your thoughts because this buyer broker commission lawsuit, we've been talking about it for months. It's not going away. Excuse me. And thank you. It's very kind of you. Usually you tell me to F off if I sneeze. So that was very nice. So, so what happens, Lisa, if 1 million real estate agents disappear? What does the market look like? We've already seen 60,000 agents leave. A lot of people are reliant on being working as a buyer agent, expecting the commission, which comes in. And I don't know how much is going to change here. We've seen what Remax and Anywhere have done with their commission lawsuit settlements, which was basically what the DOJ settlement was with NAR in the first place a couple years ago before it got overturned, with the exception of not having to be part of NAR, which we can talk about later. What happens if those agents disappear? What does that market look like?
It's so crazy interesting. So we know, and the article brought up this stat, right, that the top 20% of agents are responsible for 80 to 90% of transactions, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then if we dig into that even further, I think that the top 10% of agents, and I think this article gave just this stat, is responsible for somewhere between 65 and 70% of that 80 to 90. So the top 10% is responsible for, goodness, the bulk of the transactions to start with. I think that looking at what that means, I think that there's some changes that come to brokerage. because the profits for the brokerages that depend upon agent count, that depend upon the monthly fees, the annual fees, whatever fees that they're collecting from agents who don't sell houses, I think that their profits are going to go down in that respect. I think that ancillaries become a little bit more important for any real estate business to really run at a profitable level. But I think that the professionalism of the industry goes up like insane amounts. I think that what's going to be left are those who truly treat it like a career, those who are serious about it, and those who are committed to helping consumers and bettering the industry as a whole.
I love that because it would make the job of agents a heck of a lot easier that are committed. I saw our friend Jill Biggs put this video out. I saw it on somewhere this past week, and she said basically the agents that are serious, and she goes, "You want to go knock on the door of my competitors around the marketplace." And she works in Hoboken, which is like a square mile, like it's a very small market with a lot of transactions, super competitive, probably more competitive than either one of our markets. That's my feel in terms of getting listings and what she's doing. And she said, you know what they're going to be doing? They're going to be on the phone talking to people. And it's as much as you and I say this, or Byron says this, or the coaches that are out there say this, that you have to treat this like a business. You can't be waking up, deciding when you're going to work, when you're not, having no game plan and going into the day. It's and the stats you gave me don't surprise me. The 80-20 rule exists in most industries. I do like the idea of a higher professionalism. I also see that what's going to end up happening if that does go down is that you're going to see you talk about teams, right? And how teams have come onto the forefront here the past 10 years. I think teams become even more dominant, right? Because if you're going against an individual agent as someone that works on a team, you have so many more resources you can put towards the seller and the buyer, and you're going to have way more people in-house that you can leverage. So I do see that as a big bonus here. The other thing I see kind of happening with this is that if 1 million agents disappear, I mean, I don't think it changes the market that much. I think what's going to happen is you're going to deal with a lot of that, the horror stories people have about real estate agents. They usually come from the people that are part-time that don't know what they're doing. And
without a doubt.
And it's so I think there is the possibility this happens. I don't think 1 million. I think that's kind of a crazy number, but I do see some more people dropping out of the industry. Back in 2012, the number of real estate agents was at 1 million. That was 11 years ago. Then it soared up to north of 1.6 in a 10-year period. And transactions blew up. There was more transactions. Now that we're seeing less transactions, I think we're going to see them shrink down again.
I agree. And I think we're already seeing the transition through teams. We talk about this all the time in our circles. The middle is going to go away. And I believe that staunchly. I think it's going to cement out even further the fact that the small SEAL teams that are super nimble, that are running at really high per person productivity with minimal expenses in terms of staffing and whatnot, are going to thrive. And I think the larger teams north of 100 agents are going to thrive. I think that middle is a little bit dangerous. And I think that that's what we're going to see take a shift. And I think those in the middle are going to be forced to decide one of three avenues: get small and nimble, get big, or go away.
So what do you think the likely outcome is there?
Likely in what way? I think they're going to have to decide.
What will most do? What will most do?
I think it's going to be a mixture, if you want my honest opinion. I really think that that middle, I think some will decide that they want to go big. I also think that some will decide that they want to go big, but don't have what it takes to really go big. I think it's a lot more difficult than most people, myself included, anticipate with managing, running, and doing all of the things to run a very large team. And I think that there will be a higher failure rate for those that go big. I think that there will be some that choose to go small. Typically, that will probably be with a team lead who likes to stay in production. But I also think that some are just going to find their way out. And interestingly, I'm hiring for a couple of staff positions currently in the company that I have to refill, one of them being inside sales role. And I've interviewed 3 candidates over the past 3 weeks who have all come from other teams in market that have totally dissolved. And they were in that 10 to 15 agent range. So I wouldn't say that they were super small and nimble, but they also weren't large. And it's a fascinating trend to kind of see it shaking out already. I think the mergers and acquisitions are going to start to go up too. I think the same is going to be true for some of the brokerages, those small boutique brokerages, I think that operate maybe kind of like a team, are going to fall into the same bucket.
Are you tired of taking horrible courses offered by your local realtor board or the NAR online classes? I know I am. And the fact is, you don't get a lot of value from those courses. So here's the good news. BAMX, your real estate edutainment platform, is here. You can find out how to master objections with me, the objection handling king, practiced and scripted for over 20 years. You can learn how to use ManyChat with the broke agent and Jill from BAM. You can work with Lisa Chinatti about managing your CRM, understand how to use Canva for marketing, get Instagram hacks. All this stuff is right there in BAMX. Just use the code Knowledge Brokers, educate yourself, grow your business, sell more houses.
Yeah, I agree with you on the mergers and acquisitions. I mean, I've already started to see some of that happen in our market here. We see like mid-side teams rolling up or going with bigger organizations. And to your point, most people don't get what's involved when you want to like start a team, right? It's not just selling more houses. You've got to deal with personalities, management,
Yep.
structure,
Yep.
KPIs, reporting, profit margins. Are you a cost center or are you a profit center? These are all questions you've got to ask. And some people just don't get it. Like they think that it's easy to become a real estate agent and you get into it. I do agree with you there. And this is not going to be for everybody. The small teams to survive, I also totally agree. It's got to be someone that wants to stay in production or at least, be there at those meetings. I think that can be a very viable option for them. And the mid-sized teams, I mean, you're talking about 100 to go big. And I agree with you there. But the teams that I really worry about are the ones that are like 10 or 15 people because they feel big, right? I got 8 or 10 agents working with me. Maybe I'm thinking about adding another like leadership position. And that's when you start adding salary and those sort of things like that. You've got to almost be at like I don't even know what I mean for a sales leadership position. I mean, we've heard different capacity arguments from it's like 20 to 1 or it's 50 to 1. Like that's kind of the range that I know we've heard from various people in the industry. And if you're starting to add all these like paid salaried positions and you're not doing enough business and then buyer brokerage, let's say it goes away, right? Like we actually had a client ask about this that we're trying to get the listing signed. He said, I'm following the buyer brokerage lawsuit. And this is the first time I've heard it from a consumer. Do we have to pay somebody? Literally, the question came out yesterday in one of our meetings that you see this go away and these agents that refuse to take the time to learn how to list homes or generate their own business are going to be in an awful lot of trouble. And I do agree with you. I think you can have like that small SEAL team or the large team, but somewhere in the middle, it's like the dead zone. It's like the valley of death for a startup company. So because any sales roster, right? There's thirds, right? So you have 100 agents or 150 agents like you do. There's the top third, and it's not the top 50 people. It's the people doing the top third of the business. So if you let's say you close 90 million for the year, however many people make up that first 30 million, that's your top third. Might only be 5, might only be 6. Then you've got who's make up the next 30 million in production. And that's your middle. And that group's probably a heck of a lot bigger. Then you got your bottom, which is probably the biggest group. And the only way you can manage that is how do I move someone from tier 3 to tier 2? Or
Correct.
You're not going to necessarily get them to 1. You got to get to 2 first. Or do I need to remove them altogether because there's no shot that they're going to bring any sort of profitability to the company? So these are all things people are going to be thinking about. And agents have a decision to make right now at this point in 2023. Am I going all in on the business and getting serious? Or maybe is this not the right career path for me? And that's what people really need to decide. And if you don't do that and you're not committing for yourself, you're going to have a hard time in 2024.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And big reminder, 2024 is literally weeks away and not in the double digit weeks. But I mean, the reality is we've got 2 weeks left to the month of October, 2.5, 3 weeks, somewhere in there. By the time we get to November 1, anything that we're doing in November 1 is really going to be impacting 2024.
Yeah, and if you're not getting advice from whoever your leader is, right, and this is what knowledge brokers should be doing, whether it's your coach, your mentor, you got a team lead, you got a broker you rely on, you got whatever it is. If they're not talking about business planning with you right now, I'd be looking for somebody else. Like I heard this, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, we usually come up with our business plan in January. And I said, January? You're almost like a third of the way done the year at that, or a quarter of the way done a year. Let me rephrase that. A quarter of the way done in the year. And it's,
Right.
you see this. I grew up in real estate, right? So I've seen this, like people coming to the office. It's January 2nd, new year, new me. They probably went to the gym for the first time in 9 months. They're all pumped up and excited. And they're like, I got to get my business plan done. And I'm thinking to myself, it's January. The new year starts between November 1st and November 15th. Pick whatever date you're in. Some markets take longer for things to settle. There's some factors there. That's the new year in real estate. That's the fiscal year.
Yep.
All right, Lisa, what else we got here? I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah, one quick thing, because it is hot off the presses. September's rate lock declines. The volume fell 20% in September. So another month over month decrease in rate lock percentages, which is really kind of fascinating. Makes it down exactly 33% over the same period last year. I think we all felt it, right? And not shocking to anybody, but just further solidifies everything that we're all feeling within the industry.
All the more reason to get your plan straight, become the knowledge broker, and get clear on your goals and what your daily KPIs are. Because if you don't have a game plan going into the day, I'm going to say this again, and this is where agents get lost. They wake up and they have no idea what they're doing. If you wake up and know exactly what I need to do, here's my numbers I got to hit. Lisa, when you were in production, it was I had to get 2 appointments a day or I couldn't go home. And that was it, right? I was the same way. When you have that kind of mindset and that intent to dominate and focus, that's going to solve all the problems that the market's creating. Because we can't control the market. All we can control is what we're doing with our activities.
Without a doubt.
All right, Lisa, we've said it all. You look like a Michael Jackson lookalike, by the way, in that leather jacket. Is this your Halloween costume this year? Have you seen this?
No.
The Thriller video? This is it. This is it. Can we get a video of this?
What's the dance he does in that video? That's kind of old school.
It's like this. Here, we can we
keep
get Bobby?
dancing,
Can we make?
Tommy.
Yeah, it goes like this. Come on, you don't know the Thriller dance?
I can't see it in my mind's eye.
I did it twice, and you weren't paying attention. That was it. You have to watch the replay now.
Okay.
All right, that's it for this week's episode,
That's all I
guys.
got.
Catch you on the flip side.